So it's so easy to look around and see what everyone else is doing. And it's so easy to copy people or to be influenced by what they're doing. But I think if you want to have your own brand and you want to stand out and be unique in some way, you have to know who you are, like deep down inside of your soul. You have to always like be yourself in a way.
The voice you just heard is Daisy Braid. Daisy, aka DIY Daisy, is a content creator, textile artist, and author based on the Gold Coast in Yugambeh country. Daisy is a self-taught sewist known for her colourful, creative style that combines handmade clothing with fairly made and second-hand fashion. In this episode, you'll learn how to know when you're ready to get branding help, the keys to confidence when filming yourself for social media, what strategies you can use to create consistent content, the things that are working right now to grow brands on TikTok and Instagram, how to expand your brand to new interests while staying on brand, and so much more. So now, if you are ready, let's start the episode and talk to Daisy.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Brand Your Passion, and welcome to Daisy.
Hello!
Welcome to the show. The people who are listening will have heard a little bit about you and what you do, and what you are up to now in the introduction. But I would love to hear a bit about how you have got to where you are now. So I would love to know if you have always been a creative person.
Yes, I have always been a creative person, and I think I can thank my parents for being so encouraging and supportive of expressing my creativity, however that may be. So if you didn't know, Holly, I'm a twin, and so my twin sister and I were the firstborn of my siblings. There are 4 of us, but ever since we were children, babies, out of the womb, Mum and Dad have always encouraged us, and not always by saying be creative, but just showing us, by showing us how they are creative. So my mum was a chef, and she had her own cafe restaurant, and we kind of grew up in the cafe. And my dad, he does everything, but he built a house. So we grew up in the house that my dad built, and for my whole life, up until still now, it's been in renovation. So we've always seen people doing and creating and building and cooking and all sorts of things. And so from an early age, we went to art class. Mum made sure we went to art class to see what we wanted to do as our, creative form of expression. Dad would sit down and get us to paint model airplanes with us, or build a crystal radio, or what else did we do? All sorts of things. But just showing us that, like, you can make things, you can, and always teaching us, like, don't say can't, you can do something. Don't say can't. So if we've never really felt like we can't do anything, I always say we. It's a twin thing. But yeah, so I've always felt like I can't do. There's nothing I can't really do, so I'll just give it a try. And that's been my, I guess, something in the way that I was brought up, to just give something a go, use my initiative, and figure out something. And so through school and in high school and in university, I've always had some form of creative expression. And it used to be photography and music. And then it slowly developed a bit more. I always had an interest and a love for fashion, and I wanted to be a fashion designer. And somehow everything that I've done has led me to where I am now.
Yeah, I love that idea of, like, don't say can't. I think that's such a good attitude to have, that there's never such thing as that you can't. You can always find a way, or you can figure it out, or you can at least give it a try. Even if it doesn't work out, you can at least say that you tried. That's
exactly.
Such a good attitude to have. And I think even just having, like, role models around you to show that it's possible to have a career or to have hobbies or whatever as a creative, it must have been so good to just have that around you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, to show that that's something you can do, or that is a possibility.
Yeah, and even now I'm sitting in my auntie's house in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and I'm sitting in her shop. So she's a plus-size fashion designer, and I'm sitting surrounded by all of her clothes. And that's what she does as her career. She's been doing it for 30 years. So I've always been watching the people in my family just sort of go for it and there's a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, and So I think that's definitely inspired my dream to be something by my, be my own thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. And so you said that you started originally, or at some point you were involved in or interested in photography and that sort of thing. So how did that then turn into doing sewing and, and the materials and textiles?
It's actually really it's really funny. So in my high school, there wasn't a there was home ec, but in home ec you would go and do cooking and you would sew maybe pajama bottoms. But I already at that point could kind of sew, and so I thought I want to do art. So I'm going to do art, but I'm going to ask if I can borrow a sewing machine from the home ec room, bring it into the art room, and then for my projects or my like submissions that I would make for my assignments, I would make a collection, like a little clothing collection, and I would photograph it on my friends, and then I would submit a lookbook or a group of photos as my finished work and write a rationale and write a artist statement. And so that's how I was doing art at school, because I wanted to figure out a way to make it all make sense. I didn't need to learn how to make a pair of pajama shorts. I didn't want to go and do that whole process in home ec class. I already knew how to cook because I learned from my mum, and I already knew how to sew because I'd figured it out on my grandma's old machine. So my art teacher was very cool, and we had an amazing art room. She was super supportive, and she was like, just however you do it, do what you want to do, and then submit it. And she accepted my alternative way of submitting my assignments, but I was still getting to do what I wanted to do, which was make clothes, photograph them. I wanted to, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I was like, look at me, I'm making my own collection. I'm going to shoot it. So that's what I used to do, and I was inspired to do photography because my twin sister was doing photography, and she's still an amazing photographer. But then as I went through high school, that's how I did my assignments, and then I finished and went to uni, and I kind of forgot about what my creative expression was going to be, and so there was a period where I didn't really do photography. It was just things I did on the side, and I was going through that. I'm 18 now, I can go to the club, and I guess I had a little hiatus from expressing that creativity, and then I slowly came back into it as I finished uni and started going out into the world.
Yeah. So you went to university for something completely different.
I did business and marketing.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
So something that eventually came back into.
It did. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And so when you started to get back into sewing and finding your love of that again, how did it eventually become a business and become DIY Daisy what it is today?
It must have been 2016. I moved to Auckland. And I was working for 27 Names in the shop in Newmarket. And one day I saw a job come up for the fabric store as their media and design manager. And I thought, ooh, that's kind of like what I studied at uni. Yeah. So I applied for that job. I got the job. And I was working in the head office. And basically the job was to like write the blogs, do the marketing, social media, all of that kind of thing. And so I was seeing, this is the first time I was introduced to influencers. Like this was when influencer marketing was just beginning. And we had brand ambassadors that we would send fabric to, and they would write a blog post, or they would make a post, or they would basically promote the fabric store, but just through making their clothes and showing the fabric. And I thought one day maybe I could do that. But I never took it really seriously. It was a joke. And I said to my coworker, wouldn't it be funny if we were sewing bloggers? And I was called DIY Daisy, and you can be called Needlepoint Nicole.
Yeah.
Obviously we had great ideas there. Didn't work out for her, but I was like, okay, maybe this isn't a funny joke. Maybe I can really do it. So my boyfriend at the time, he was my Instagram boyfriend. So I would make him take photos of me in my outfits. And I just started posting, and it wasn't a business at first, and it only became a business in the last couple of years. So at first it just started out as a blog, a place for me to share what I was making, and then I started sharing projects, and like sewing tutorials,
Mm-hmm.
and they were always free. So there's no money involved
Yeah.
for a really long time. And it wasn't until 2020, so COVID, that I really started doing content creation for brands and doing things in exchange for money.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so when you started it out as a joke, I guess, in the beginning, and then started taking it a little bit more seriously, did you do any branding work at that time? Or yeah, tell me about the branding journey of DIY Daisy in terms of design, but also in terms of, did you think about anything strategically in terms of like your audience?
At first, I wasn't thinking about branding because I didn't know where it was going to go. And I knew that the way I photographed my makes had there was a certain theme or a style that I wanted to keep consistent, but it was all really lo-fi. It was just photos on my phone camera, and I didn't have a logo, nothing like that. But then I moved to Tokyo in Japan, and one day at work, I had a bit of downtime, so I thought, I'm going to make a logo for my website. And I knew I wanted it to have a flower because obviously Daisy, it's a flower. And I wanted it to be something colourful and also joyful and something that feels cute but not childish. I borrowed my coworker's iPad and I hand drew this flower and a face, and then I took that and turned it into a vector on Illustrator, and then I played around with the colours and the sizing, and my original logo is like the most simple form of what my brand mark is now. So the flower with a face and the eye and the nose and the eyes, sorry, and the nose and the mouth, spell out DIY. And so I just knew I wanted it to have a smile. I love smiles and I love flowers. So I was like, let's combine that, but do something interesting with the eyes and the nose. And so my original logo is what my logo is now, but just now my logo is way better.
That's amazing. And so when you are working with these brands, how do you sort of keep things on brand for you while also managing what the brand wants as well? How do you sort of balance both of those things?
I only accept content creation work if they are willing to work with my idea. So I've had opportunities to do create content for brands, but they want it to be a certain way. They want UCG content creation, and I've just had to say that's not what I do. I am DIY Daisy, and I'll make content that works in with my content. It has to make sense. It has to provide value, and it has to align with what I'm known for. People have called me out. They will send me a message, Daisy, this is not it, or like, is this an ad, or what is this? People, they'll ask me because they've said, like, this is what one person said to me. I follow you because I trust what you have to say, but this seems dodgy or whatever. And so I've just learned to only work with people that are going to let me have creative, not complete control, but it has to make sense for the DIY Daisy brand.
Yeah, I think that's a really good boundary to have and good to get in place. So that's amazing. And you're not only obviously creating content for brands, but you create content for yourself on Instagram and TikTok. And as you said, you have 82,000 followers on Instagram and 52,000.5 on TikTok. As you said, not that those follower counts matter, but that's pretty impressive. So what do you think has worked for you in terms of building and growing your brand, and maybe specifically recently, what do you think has worked?
I think something that I've always tried to do is have a way that I shoot my photos so that there's consistency. I love consistency. And when something seems out of place, I'm like, oh, what's that doing there? So I always try and keep my content consistent. And I started dabbling in this idea last year. It's not my idea. It's just what I've seen other people doing, is the idea of a series. So a content series. I tried to start it last year, but I guess I was just a little bit too busy, a bit frazzled, a bit distracted. And so I'm trying again this year, and by starting a series, people can get invested in what you're up to, and they want to see what's happening every month or every time you post, and they want to see an update. And so by starting that series, you're kind of hooking people in. They're not necessarily subscribing, but they're keeping an eye on what you're up to and they're waiting to see what's happening next. And I think that's been really helpful for my engagement. Last year, because I wasn't consistent and I'm not creating content in the way that I used to. And I guess I can't either because the algorithm has changed. So I'm just trying out some new things, and I tested out a few things last year and I thought, okay, that worked, that didn't. I'm going to do what worked and I'm going to try and stick to it and be consistent. So I started a content series and I've seen my engagement increase heaps. I couldn't tell you the exact numbers, but I know for sure last year it didn't make me sad, but it made me feel like, okay, you got to figure this out again because I was in this point where I felt like, am I going to stop being DIY Daisy? Am I going to stop creating this content? What the heck am I going to do? And I was like, am I quitting? Am I quitting this? Am I logging off? But then I spoke to some of my closest friends and my partner, and they just said to me, you can't stop. Like, that's literally who you are. People want to see what you're doing. And maybe I just needed a little bit of a shake, a slap across the face, metaphorically. Yeah. And when they said that to me, I thought, okay, I can do it, but I'm going to have to set myself a plan, I think. And so I've set myself a plan. I've signed myself up to a series, and I'm going to try and stick to it all year.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you're doing the like Hexie quilt. Is that the series you're talking about?
Yes. Well, that's kind of one of them. That started unintentionally. But yes, that's a series now. So me sharing my updates on the Hexie quilt, that's a series. But the other series I'm doing is kind of the year of DIY. So every month I have a different prompt, and from that prompt I will make one project for my gallery wall. But I'll let you in on a secret. Just because the prompt is for the gallery wall, I will be making projects based on that prompt for other areas of my house, because I pitched a book last year and it didn't get rejected, but they didn't want it. So yeah, it kind of got rejected. And all of the ideas that I had for that book, I want to share them. So I'm going to share them as free content.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, you made the ideas. You might as well use them for something else.
But I just thought if I spread it out over a year, I'm not putting too much pressure on myself, and I can do one project a month or I can do 3 projects a month. And that way it doesn't feel so scary to try and stick to it. So all I have to do is at least one project a month. And if I share it, then I'm consistent, and hopefully people will want to hang around and keep seeing what I'm doing. And maybe it will inspire them to make something too, or it will inspire them to try quilting a Hexie quilt. And people have already told me that they want to get into it now. So I'm just excited that what my initial goal when I started is still happening. People are still getting inspired, or they're getting motivated to try something new and try sewing or try creating a DIY.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I already got inspired to go get the stuff to make a Hexie flower. So I'm only one step there.
Yes.
I'm going to make the little like wall Hexie flower. So
love
you
that.
inspired me already. So yeah, and you definitely do like seem to be posting consistently, even if you fell off a little bit last year, but you seem to be posting consistently and sharing lots and showing what you're making and thinking and doing. So how do you sort of think of your ideas and document them, and sort of what is your process to get them from idea to Instagram or TikTok? What does that look like for you?
I do have my list I have my pitch, and so that's something that I refer to every now and then. But I guess I have my calendar, and on the calendar it has the prompt for each month, and then I have the project ideas from that prompt. And so in the month or a couple of months leading up to that prompt, I will start gathering materials, making notes. And something that I do in the car or in the shower or just walking around my house is practice a script. So I will practice what I'm going to say in a reel or a video, because I don't want to spend 3 hours filming. I want to do it and try and get it done in 1 or 2 takes. So I'll have notes on my phone. I'll sometimes have a document where I type out a little script, and then I practice the script in the car. And so that's sort of what I'll do first. And then when there's a day where I'm able to film, so in the afternoon when I finish work or on the weekend, I'll set myself up to work on as much content as possible and get it all banked for the week or for the month. And then I just slowly drip it out.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good way of doing it. I like the idea of like practicing a script because yeah, sometimes I get to recording something and I'm like, what am I gonna say?
Exactly. But your little intro at the start there, you just did that like you were reading it off paper. Maybe you were.
I do have like bullet points on Notion, and Notion is my go-to. Yeah, but you obviously, one of my questions was that you obviously seem, well, I think you seem very confident filming and photographing yourself, and I was curious about if you have any tips for people who maybe aren't very confident filming. I know you're very good with the little tiny microphone, talking to camera and all of that stuff. Do you have any tips for people who are maybe feeling a little less confident filming themselves or talking to camera or photographing themselves?
Well, definitely practice. Practice before you get behind the camera. Know what you want to say. Some people are okay with just going off the cuff, but for me, I need to be efficient because I don't have all day to film one video. And that's also a very long time to spend on one short 30-second reel or minute-long reel. So one is practice. Another one, make notes like you. I'll have bullet points or I'll have notes breaking down what I want to achieve in that in my script or whatever I'm trying to say, and practice it. Then make yourself feel confident. So I feel most confident when I have a little bit of makeup on, when I'm not sweating, when my house is a little bit quiet, so I don't have to ask anyone to be quiet, and set my space up. I make sure my space is clean, and then I'm ready to go. So I always set myself up because like everyone, I have my insecurities, and sometimes I do get behind the camera and then I'll see the footage back and I'm like, oh my goodness, my eyebrows are uneven. Or sometimes I look at myself in the recording and I think, oh, I don't like how I look today. So sometimes I'll film for an hour and then I'll go, I have to do that all again tomorrow because I just don't feel confident. But I've just learned to accept the fact that that's what I look like, and I can't really change how I look. I can add a little bit of makeup though to feel a bit more confident, and so that's what I'll do. And then I guess I just make sure that I'm consuming other people's content to see what's not exactly what's trendy, but like best practices for structuring a video. Obviously, you want to start, middle, and an end, but you might need to change the way that you edit. So, uh, or different kinds of music that you add, things like that. I just make sure I'm consuming content as well so that I'm not getting stuck in my own little mind bubble and I'm going, okay, I could try that trend or I could try that trick or I could try that editing style until I found how I like to edit. And I like to think of it as clean, lo-fi, a little bit minimal. Like I don't like having too much going on. I just sit down and put my tripod on. Oh, that would be another thing. Get a little tripod.
Yeah, great hot tip. I love that. And you mentioned like trying new things. I've followed you for a while and I've seen that you obviously started out with sewing clothes, but over the last, I guess, year or couple of years, you've somewhat branched out into making like textile art and other things with fabric. So how do you sort of balance wanting to try new things with having and maintaining sort of this brand that you've built? And I guess you sort of alluded to that with wanting to branch out into like shoes and coats and other things too. So how do you balance wanting to try new things or branch out into other things with also maintaining your existing brand and the audience that's there for the things you have been doing?
Yeah. Well, the thing about that is I can only make so many clothes for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm a selfish sewer, so I don't really make for other people unless it's a gift. So after 6 or 7 years of sewing my own wardrobe and developing my personal style and figuring out what I like to wear, I've got enough. I feel like I have enough. I've got what I need. So I just had to start sewing other things because obviously I still want to express myself creatively and make things, but I can't keep making clothes. I also feel like if I'm always making new clothes, in essence, maybe I'm encouraging people to constantly want new clothes. So that's one part of it. But I think by always having something that is part of my core niche, so sewing every now and then, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, I'll make a clothing item and sharing about that. Then that's how I feel like maybe I can maintain that audience of people who are following me for that reason. And then I'm also branching out and hopefully meeting new audiences by sewing new things. But there is so much more to sewing than just clothing. So I guess I've reached my peak of clothing and I'm like, okay, what else can I do?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good, healthy balance of like, okay, I'm still maintaining, the people who are there specifically for the clothing, but still allowing myself space to create and try new things. And I like the attitude of like, well, I'm attracting new people with this new stuff. So that's great.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. And if people don't want to see that new stuff, then they know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, they can just scroll on past. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, I have two last questions for you, which are the questions that I ask every single person. So my first question is, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you have learnt about branding your passion?
Biggest lesson?
I can ask you the second one if you want. They're similar questions, but it might just prompt it differently. What piece of advice would you pass on to other creatives who are wanting to brand their passion?
I think my advice would be to spend time figuring out who you are. So it's so easy to look around and see what everyone else is doing. And it's so easy to copy people or to be influenced by what they're doing. But I think if you want to have your own brand and you want to stand out and be unique in some way, you have to know who you are, like deep down inside of your soul. You have to always like be yourself in a way. So it does take time to develop your own look and feel and brand and voice. And it just comes with time. And mine has developed so much as I've gotten older and made more and met more people. And it doesn't come from just being all alone. You have to go and experience things. But I think if you're trying to be yourself and be like honest and authentic, then your brand will make so much more sense to people. But if you are trying to look or create content or make the same things as other people, it will always feel like someone else.
Brilliant advice.
You want me to try the other question? What was it again?
If you want, it was, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned about branding your passion?
Branding my passion. Oh, I guess, okay, I got it. You can evolve. Your brand might not look the same as it did 10 years ago. It's okay to evolve and change. Like if I still had my original logo, I would hate it.
Yeah.
It's okay to change and try new things when you are working towards your brand and you're like making your brand your own. I guess you're right. I was prompted by the other question.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes time to like get to the one now, but right now I'm like, this is my branding and it feels so authentically me. It feels so much like who I am right now that I think I could probably use this for the next 5 to 10 years and it would still work. I can change the colors, but I feel like this is going to be with me for a while and it's going to feel like it fits. So I think it's okay to change and evolve.
Yeah, I agree. I always say that because we as people evolve, so it would be silly if the brands that we embody or that are supposed to reflect us didn't evolve with us. So, yeah, I love that. Amazing advice. Thank you so much, Daisy. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your advice and your lessons and everything that you've learned along the way. Do you want to tell the people what you have going on or where they can find you or both?
Well, if you're interested in sewing, maybe seeing a girl make a quilt and want to get inspired by some home decor or some colourful fashion, you can find me at DIY Daisy. Or if you want my actual it's always _DIY Daisy because someone stole the name before I got to it. And my website is DIYDaisy.com.
Amazing. And I will leave all of those links in the show notes and all of that goodies, so you will be able to find Daisy everywhere she is at. So thank you so much, Daisy.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Brand Your Passion. If you enjoyed this one, it would mean the world to me if you could share it on social media and make sure to tag me at Maker and Moxie so that I can see and share it too. It really does help to get the show out there, which means that we can all work towards that Maker and Moxie vision of making the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. Thanks so much in advance, and I will talk to you in the next one. Until then, keep creating.